The cold wind howled outside, shaking the metal plates of the shelter like a hungry beast. Inside, Daniel sat close to the small heater, wrapped in an old thermal blanket. His eyes were heavy, but he didn't allow himself to sleep fully anymore. Not after what happened last time he let his guard down. He had been alone for 78 days now. On this forgotten alien planet, Earth's colonization plan had failed. His team was either dead or missing. The sky above was red during the day and pitch black at night. Full of strange sounds and shadows that never seemed to rest, his shelter was hidden under the remains of a crashed shuttle. A narrow entrance led into a metal chamber. Patched with scraps and lined with emergency supplies, he had food and water for maybe a month more. If he rationed, maybe longer, but he hadn't seen another living being in weeks, until tonight he heard at first a soft sound, like something scraping against the metal door. His body tensed. He reached for the old blaster he kept beside him, aiming it toward the entrance. Every muscle in his body was frozen. He waited, breathing slowly, counting each second. Another sound came quieter this time, like a footstep, but soft light. Too light to be a grown creature. Then, silence. Daniel stood, his heart thudding in his chest. He moved slowly toward the entrance. Blaster raised, ready to shoot. He whispered, "If you're a beast, you'll regret coming in here." But no beast came. Instead, the metal door creaked open. Just a small figure slipped through the gap, thin, shaking and silent. It wasn't human. That was clear at once. The skin was pale violet, the body small and fragile, big dark eyes full of fear, and sharp ears that twitched with every movement. Daniel stepped back in shock. The blaster shook slightly in his hand. The alien girl stood there, her arms wrapped around herself. Her clothes were dirty and torn. Her feet were bare, red from cold. She looked at him, but not with anger or fear. She looked at him like a lost animal looks at a warm fire. Then, without saying a word, she walked slowly to the corner of the shelter. She lay down next to the wall, pulled the thin blanket off the bench, and curled up on the floor like a kitten. Daniel didn't know what to say. He didn't lower the blaster right away. He just stared. She didn't move, didn't speak. She just closed her eyes and breathed slowly, her body still trembling from the cold. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days, maybe more. Daniel watched for a long time, expecting some kind of trick, but there was none. She had come in, laid down beside him, and acted like she belonged. Hours passed, but Daniel didn't sleep. He sat by the heater, still watching her, still holding the blaster. The girl didn't stir. Just breathed, softly, like a whisper in the silence. By morning, the temperature outside had dropped even more. Ice crystals formed on the edge of the door. The girl woke with a weak cough. She looked at Daniel, then quickly turned her head. Ashamed or afraid, he couldn't tell. Daniel finally spoke, his voice dry from silence. "Are you alone?" She didn't answer. He pointed at his food rations, then at her. "Hungry?" She hesitated, then nodded once. Very slowly, he placed a small nutrient bar on the floor between them. She crawled over like a scared animal and picked it up. She ate it slowly, like it might vanish if she moved too fast. Daniel sat back, watching every movement, trying to understand who or what she was. After eating, she went back to the corner, pulled the blanket around herself, and closed her eyes again. Daniel sighed. "Well, guess you're staying then." He lowered the blaster, placed it aside, and finally leaned back against the wall for the first time in a long while. The shelter didn't feel completely empty outside. The wind screamed louder than ever, but inside there was silence. Warm and strange. That night, she moved again. Daniel had fallen into light sleep when he felt something touch his arm. He opened his eyes fast, ready to grab the blaster again. But it was just her. She had quietly curled up beside him, like it, was the most normal thing in the world. Her head rested against his shoulder, her tiny body seeking warmth, her breathing soft and steady. Daniel didn't push her away. He didn't say a word. He just closed his eyes and let the silence hold them both. In that moment, on a dead planet under a frozen sky, a human and an alien shared something rare. Not words, not understanding, just warmth and maybe, just maybe belonging. The morning after she entered the shelter, Daniel woke up to the sound of soft breathing. She was still there, curled beside him. Her face was peaceful now. No fear, no tears, just sleep, gentle and deep. Like she had finally found safety. Daniel sat up slowly. Careful not to wake her, he rubbed his face, still unsure if this was all real. Was she a dream? A trick? Some strange creature pretending to be innocent? But when he looked at her small body, thin arms, and bruised legs, he didn't feel fear. He felt something else pity. When she finally woke, she didn't speak. She looked around, like she forgot where she was, then spotted Daniel and froze. He didn't move. Just raised a hand slowly and gave her a small nod. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe here." She didn't understand the words, but something in his voice made her relax a little. Her big black eyes studied him like she was trying to read his thoughts. Then she nodded just once. Daniel tried to ask questions, simple ones. "What's your name? Where did you come from? Are there more of you?" But she stayed silent. Her mouth moved once or twice, like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. He sighed and grabbed a piece of metal scrap. He used a sharp rock to draw a stick figure of himself. Then he pointed to himself. "Daniel." She watched, then reached out, slowly took the scrap, and scratched a shape, her hand shaking. It wasn't a name, just a small mark, like a curled ribbon or vine. She touched her chest, pointing to the symbol. "That's you?" he asked. She nodded. "Again, okay," he whispered. "I'll call you Mira." She looked at him, blinking slowly, then gave a soft nod. Mirat was simple, soft, and somehow it felt right. Over the next few days, they shared the small shelter. Daniel gave her food small amounts at first. Her body was weak, and too much at once made her sick. He wrapped her wounds with old medical tape, cleaned her cuts with warm water. She flinched every time, but didn't pull away. She still didn't talk, but she watched everything. When Daniel worked on fixing the water filter, she sat nearby when he checked the solar panels. She followed quietly, staying in the shadows. When he cooked, she stared with wide eyes, amazed by every little thing. Daniel noticed she had strange marks on her arms and back. Not natural ones, scars, burns, signs of pain. Some were deep, old wounds that never healed right. It made his chest tight every time he saw them. Someone had hurt her, someone cruel. One night, while they sat in silence, Mira took the same scrap piece and started drawing. She scratched out a box with bars, then drew a small figure inside. Then another figure larger, with sharp claws and teeth standing outside. Daniel looked at the drawing and felt cold. "You were trapped," he whispered. "Like a prisoner." She nodded slowly, then used the rock to draw a broken chain. Her eyes looked into his, and for the first time, he saw something else, something burning behind the fear, hope. Daniel picked up another piece of scrap and drew a tiny shelter. Then to figures inside her and him, he pointed at it, then pointed at her. "Safe," he said. She stared at the picture, then at him. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, but all she did was nod again, and then she leaned closer to him. Just a little, not touching, but near. That night, she stayed beside him again, but this time she didn't wait until he slept. She lay down beside him while he was still awake, like she trusted him now, even if just a little. Daniel didn't understand everything, but he knew she needed help. She needed food, warmth, safety, and maybe something more. Maybe someone who wouldn't hurt her. She wasn't just a visitor anymore. She was a part of the shelter now. The next morning, Daniel set up his old translation device. It was broken long ago, but maybe he could fix it if he could understand her language. He could ask the questions he really wanted to ask. Who hurt you? Where are they now? Are they coming? But as he worked, Mira sat beside him, drawing shapes in the dirt with her finger. One was a star, one was a moon, and one was a large shadow covering them both. Daniel didn't know what it meant, but it made his stomach twist. Something had chased her here, and it might not be done yet. Still, when she smiled just a little, he smiled back. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. For now, she was warm, fed, and safe. And in the quiet of the shelter, with cold winds outside and silence, within two souls who didn't speak the same language, shared something deeper. A bond not made with words, but with kindness. And for the first time in many nights, Daniel didn't feel alone. Days passed slowly, but something had changed in the shelter. It no longer felt like a prison of silence and survival. Now, it felt like a place where life had started to return. Daniel and Myra shared every hour, every moment, even if words never came. Myra still didn't speak, but her actions began to speak for her. She helped Daniel sweep dust from the corners, brought small rocks to patch the cracks in the wall, and made soft, bird-like whistles whenever she noticed something outside the shelter. Daniel had started to trust her fully, not because she said anything, but because her eyes said everything. When he handed her food, she looked grateful. When he came back from gathering supplies, she looked relieved. When she sat beside him, quiet and close, she looked like someone who didn't want to be alone ever again. One morning, Daniel noticed something while she changed clothes. Her back, it was covered in thin, raised scars. Some looked fresh, others old and faded. They curved in strange lines, too perfect to be from accident. They looked like brands, like she had been marked. He felt sick in his stomach. "What did they do to you?" he whispered under his breath. Mira caught him looking. She turned her back quickly, shame flashing in her face. But Daniel didn't turn away. He stood up, walked over, and gently placed a blanket around her shoulders. "No more hiding," he said softly. "Not for me." She didn't speak, but she nodded, and that night, for the first time, she moved even closer to him, her hand resting lightly on his arm as she slept. Daniel didn't move it away. That same night, he finished fixing the old translator. It sparked twice, then lit up with a blue screen. His heart jumped with excitement. "Mira," he said, tapping her shoulder, "I think it's ready." She looked at the device nervously, like it might bite her. Daniel turned it on and spoke slowly. "Do you understand this?" There was a delay. Then the device spoke in her language. Myra's eyes widened. She pointed at herself, then slowly said a few words. The translator buzzed and translated. Hurt, escape, safe. It was broken, clunky, but it worked. Daniel's voice caught in his throat. "Who hurt you?" he asked. Not sure he wanted the answer. She hesitated, then pointed to her marks and said, "Arena, fight, pain." Daniel stared at her, not blinking. "They made you fight." She nodded, then drew in the dirt again, two stick figures fighting in a cage. One was her, small and alone. The other was a tall alien with spikes and claws. In the next drawing, her figure was on the ground, bleeding, while others laughed from outside the cage. Daniel clenched his fists. "Monsters," he muttered. Mira looked up at him, then gently touched his clenched hand. Her fingers were small, cool, but steady. She didn't want pity. He saw it now. She didn't cry for herself anymore. She had survived, and that made her stronger than anyone he had ever met. The next day, she drew more, A starship with thick bars, then a broken window, and a trail of footprints leading into a forest. Daniel pointed to the trail. You escaped. Here. She nodded again. But are they still looking for you? She didn't answer. Her eyes grew dark, full of fear. Then she drew another shape, a shadow, tall, with glowing red eyes. Standing over the shelter, Daniel stared at the drawing. Is it coming here? She hesitated, then whispered through the translator. Hunter. Follows. Never stops. He sat back, breathing heavy. Then we prepare, he said firmly. You're not alone now. Mira tilted her head, looking unsure. Daniel picked up his old blaster, charged the battery, and checked the traps around the shelter. If it comes, it'll find me waiting. Mira stared at him like she'd never seen anyone do that before. Like no one had ever said they would fight for her. Later. That evening, while they shared a quiet meal, Daniel asked, Do you want to stay here? With me? The translator buzzed. Myra looked down, thinking. Her lips moved softly. Then she answered, Belong here. Daniel smiled. Then we'll protect it together. That night. Myra didn't curl beside him after he slept. She walked over while he sat by the heater, sat beside him, and leaned her head on his shoulder. No fear, no shame, only peace. Daniel looked at her and saw more than just a survivor. He saw someone brave. Someone who had been through hell and still had the heart to trust again. Outside, the wind picked up. The storm clouds were darker than usual. But inside, in the quiet warmth of the shelter, two broken souls had started to become whole, not through words, but through actions, safety, and something rare in a cold galaxy connection. The wind outside had grown stronger. It screamed across the broken land, pushing dust and ice against the rocks like sharp knives. But inside the shelter, it was quiet, warm, almost peaceful. Myra slept soundly now, not like before. Her face didn't carry fear anymore, at least not when she was beside Daniel. But Daniel was worried, and he couldn't sleep. He had noticed something strange. 3 nights ago, a flash of light in the sky, small and quick, like a scout drone. He'd seen them before during missions, tiny machines used by other species to search for life or trace signals. They usually meant someone was watching. Now, they were back. Daniel stepped outside during daylight, wearing a breathing mask and heavy coat. The red sky above him was silent, but his eyes scanned the clouds carefully. Then he saw it again, a black speck flying too smoothly to be a bird, too fast to be a drifting drone. It vanished into the horizon in seconds. He returned to the shelter quickly and locked the entrance tight. Mira noticed his face the moment he walked in. Her smile disappeared. She tilted her head, worried, and placed a hand on his arm. Danger? She whispered through the translator. Daniel gave a slow nod. I think someone's looking for you. Myra sat down, pulled her knees close, and stared at the floor. Her fingers began shaking again, like they did the night she first arrived. Daniel sat beside her and took her hand gently. I promise to keep you safe. And I will. She didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. They were wide, dark, and filled with memories that still haunted her. Then she stood up and went to the dirt corner where she often drew. She grabbed the metal piece and began scratching something new. Daniel watched closely. She drew a tall figure, cloaked in shadows, with glowing red eyes, claws long as swords, and wires connected to its arms. It had a collar filled with blinking lights, and its mouth looked like it was always screaming. She pointed at it and whispered just one word. Hunter. Daniel swallowed hard. That thing is the one chasing you. Mira nodded slowly. She continued drawing. This time, she drew herself tiny in a cage. The hunter stood outside, holding the bars. Then she scratched a line between them, and next to it, a small explosion. Then footprints, her footprints running. Away, you escaped during a blast, Daniel said, understanding the picture. You ran from him. Myra pointed at the hunter again, then tapped the floor, right where she stood. Daniel's heart skipped. He's coming here. Myra looked down. As if blaming herself, her fingers curled, her shoulders shook, but she didn't cry. Daniel grabbed his old combat gear from storage, half-broken armor, a heavy coat, and his best weapon, the blaster, which had only 6 energy shots left. He walked to the door and opened a hidden panel, revealing wires, sensors, and rusty traps. He hadn't used them in years, but now they might be needed. He started rewiring, tightening, sharpening. Myra helped him without being asked. She handed him tools, fetched spare parts, and even set up motion alarms. She was fast, her small fingers able to reach tight corners. Together, they worked like a team. At night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept the blaster close, eyes on the entrance. Myra lay beside him, but she didn't sleep either. Her eyes were open, glowing faintly in the dark, her hands gripping a metal rod like a spear. In the early morning, a new sound came, a mechanical buzz in the distance. Daniel froze. Myra sat up quickly. The sound got louder, like engines cutting through the sky. Low and hunting, they ran to the outside hatch, peeking from a crack in the rocks. In the sky above, a small black scout ship floated silently, scanning the ground. It passed over their shelter, then hovered for a few seconds, like it had found something strange. Myra's hand tightened on Daniel's coat. Then the ship moved on, disappearing into the clouds. They went back inside. Daniel locked everything, reinforced the door with extra steel panels. "We have maybe 1 or 2 days before it comes back," he said, "maybe less." Myra didn't respond. Instead, she stood up straight, pulled her hair back, and lifted her chin. Her fear hadn't vanished, but something new had replaced it. Readiness? She was tired of running. Later that evening, Myra activated the translator again. Her voice was quiet but clear. "If I stay, you die," she said. Daniel shook his head. "If you leave, you die." She looked at him, surprised. He stepped closer and added, "This is your home now, and I'm not letting anything take that away." She blinked slowly, then whispered, "Home," and touched her chest. Outside, the wind blew stronger, carrying dust, storm, and danger inside the shelter. 2 souls stood shoulder to shoulder, not as strangers, not as victim and protector, but as one, ready for what was coming. The warning came with the first flash of red light in the sky. Daniel was outside adjusting the motion sensor when the horizon suddenly lit up like a burning sun. A loud rumble followed, shaking the ground beneath his boots. He turned fast and ran inside, slamming the shelter door behind him. Myra was already standing, holding the metal rod they had sharpened into a spear. Her eyes were wide, glowing faintly. "They're here," she whispered. Daniel didn't need a translator to understand her fear. He grabbed the blaster, checked the charge, and nodded. "We hold them off outside." The wind had gone completely silent. That scared Daniel more than the noise. The silence felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Then came the second flash, this one closer. A shrieking sound followed, like metal grinding against the sky. Then impact. Boom. The ground shook as something heavy crashed nearby. Daniel turned to the monitors. They showed a large object landing less than a mile away. The scanner blinked with red warnings, identifying the incoming shape as unknown hostile class. Myra moved beside him, trembling but not stepping back. Her body glowed brighter now, the soft blue light rising from her hands and neck. "Hunter," she said again, voice tight, "he's here." Daniel looked at her. "Then we fight." They didn't have time to prepare more. Within minutes, the outer sensors beeped movement outside, fast and smooth, not like wild creatures, but like something trained, controlled. Then came the first blast. A section of the outer wall exploded inward. spraying dust and metal into the air, Daniel pushed Mira back and aimed the blaster at the opening. A drone slithered in thin black, its body floating just above the ground. With blinking red lights and sharp blades on each side, Daniel fired once direct hit. The drone burst into sparks and metal, but two more came through the smoke. Mira stepped forward without warning, her hands raised, glowing brighter now. Suddenly, a burst of energy flew from her palms and struck one of the drones, melting it instantly. The other turned to Herb. Daniel shot it before it could move. Silence followed for a few seconds, only their breathing loud in the room. Daniel stared at her, shocked. What was that? Mira shook her head. I don't know, she said slowly. It just happens. When I'm afraid, he looked at her glowing hands. Well, let it happen. We need everything we've got. But it wasn't over. The main shelter door began to heat up, turning red. Then white metal creaked as something massive pressed from outside. Mira backed away, eyes locked on the door. Her whole body started glowing now, like her fear was waking something inside her. Daniel aimed the blaster again. We can't let him in. Then the door burst open. What entered wasn't a drone. It was tall, armored, and terrifying. It had long black arms, red, burning eyes, and a face that looked half machine, half beast. Cables ran through its body like veins, and its chest pulsed with red light. It was the hunter. Mira screamed, a sound filled with fear and rage. Her light exploded outward, filling the room. Daniel was thrown back by the force. The hunter stepped toward her. Metal claws raised. Daniel fired once, twice hitting its chest, but the shots only slowed it down. It knocked the blaster from his hand and sent him crashing into the wall. His vision blurred. Pain shooting through his shoulder. Mira stood alone now, between Daniel and the hunter. She raised her hands again. Her body blazed with energy. Her eyes no longer looked afraid. They looked fierce. Her voice was louder now, shaking with power. No more, she said. You will not take me again. A massive wave of energy burst from her chest, striking the hunter directly. The creature screamed, metal cracking, sparks flying. It stumbled back, crashing into the wall. Daniel watched in awe as Mira stepped forward, pushing the hunter further with her light. The hunter tried to reach her, its claws scraping the floor, but Mira's power was too strong now. Her body was glowing like a star. Her energy cracked the walls, shook the floor, and finally broke. The hunter, with one final scream. The hunter collapsed into a pile of broken metal and fire. Silence returned. Daniel lay on the floor, breathing hard. Mira, he whispered. You did it? She turned to him, her light fading slowly. She rushed to his side, falling to her knees. Her hands touched his face. Hurt? She asked softly. He gave a weak smile. Not as much as that thing. Mira helped him sit up. Her hands glowed gently now, and as she pressed them to his shoulder, he felt warmth spread through his body. The pain began to ease. Slowly, Daniel looked at her. You're not just someone who escaped, he said. You're something powerful, something they feared. Mira looked into his eyes, and this time she smiled, a real smile, outside. The fire still burned where the hunter fell, but inside the shelter it was quiet again. They had survived the night of fire together. The fire from the broken hunter still burned outside the shelter. Flames danced in the wind, casting strange shadows on the walls. Daniel sat against the inner wall, his shoulder wrapped in cloth. Mira knelt beside him. Watching him breathe, her glow had faded, but something inside her had changed forever. She wasn't the same frightened girl who had curled up beside him weeks ago. Now, she was something more, something stronger. Daniel opened his eyes slowly. You saved us, he whispered. Mira shook her head. You saved me first. He gave a weak smile. We saved each other for hours. They didn't speak much. Daniel needed rest. Mira stayed close, checking his bandages, keeping the shelter warm with her quiet energy. Every time her hand touched his skin, a warm wave passed through him, soothing the pain. It wasn't just kindness, it was power. Daniel had seen strange things during his years in space, but Mira's ability was different. It wasn't just energy blasts or glowing light. It felt alive, like it responded to her emotions. Fear made it wild, but love made it gentle. That night, as the fire outside died down, Mira sat in the corner, drawing again in the dirt. Daniel watched her. Tired but curious, she drew the hunter. Again, but this time, she showed it broken. Then she drew herself standing tall beside a figure that looked like Daniel. He smiled. "That's us." She nodded, then touched the heart she had drawn in the center of her own chest. "What's happening to you, Mira?" Daniel asked softly. "You're changing?" She looked down at her glowing hands, then touched the translator. Her voice came out slow and soft. "I don't know why. I burn when scared. It grows when safe. It heals." Daniel nodded. "Like your heart controls it." She looked up, eyes shining. "Yes, my heart." In the following days, they repaired the shelter. Mira used her light to melt damage. Metal infused cracks in the walls. Her strength amazed Daniel, but he also noticed something else. Each time she used her energy, she looked more tired afterward. As if it cost her something, he told her to rest. But she only smiled and said, "Worth it." Daniel started testing the energy with small task-spouring lights, heating food, charging old tools. Mira helped with all of it. But each time, she had to concentrate deeply. Her control was growing. But it wasn't perfect. One afternoon, while trying to power the water system, her energy sparked too strong. It melted a pipe and steam burst into the air. She stepped back, frightened, her glow pulsing. Daniel rushed over, calmed her. "It's okay," he said. "You're still learning." Mira looked into his eyes. "Danger to you?" He shook his head. "You've never hurt me, not even once. Your power listens to your heart, and your heart is good." She blinked slowly, then stepped closer, resting her forehead gently against his shoulder. "Then I stay," she whispered. "Until you tell me go." He wrapped his arm around her and whispered, "You never have to go." But their peace didn't last long. The scanner picked up another signal nod from the hunter, but from the sky, a new ship had entered the atmosphere. Larger and faster. It wasn't drifting or scanning, it was searching. Directly, Daniel stared at the blinking lights on the screen. Someone saw the hunter's fire. "They're coming to check." Mira stood still, silent, then spoke softly. "More will come, always more." Daniel turned to her. "Then we don't." "Wait, this time." She looked confused. "We run?" "No," he said firmly. "We rise. You're not a slave anymore. You're not prey. You're powerful, and I'm not leaving you behind." Mira didn't answer right away, but her hands began to glow again, this time steady, not wild. She walked to the center of the shelter, stood tall, and raised both arms. Daniel watched as her energy spread through the room. Touching the walls, the wires, the broken systems, lights flickered on, machines powered up, the shelter came to life. Not with human electricity, but with her. "She's sinking," Daniel whispered, amazed. "She's becoming part of the system." Mira turned slowly, her eyes glowing like stars. Her voice came through the translator clearly now. "This place is home. I protect it. We protect it." Daniel stepped beside her, holding his blaster in one hand. Then, "Let them come." Outside, the wind carried the sound of engines in the distance. Inside, the shelter pulsed with life. No longer just a place to hide. Now, it was a place to stand, together. The ship appeared in the sky just before sunrise, dark and heavy, its engines humming like thunder. Daniel stood at the entrance of the shelter, blaster in hand. Mira stood beside him, glowing softly. Her eyes focused on the horizon. She didn't tremble anymore. She didn't hide. This time, she stood ready. The ship circled above, then slowly began to descend, kicking up dust and shaking the ground. It landed just over the ridge, out of sight, but close to close. Daniel checked the scanner. One ship, but big, could be scouts, could be slavers, or worse. Mira stepped closer to the wall and placed her glowing hand against it. The metal warmed under her touch. Lights inside the shelter came on, powered by her energy. Systems that hadn't worked in years lit up like stars. She wasn't just using the shelter anymore. She was becoming part of it. Daniel stared in silence, amazed again. "You've changed this place," he said. "You made it alive." Mira looked at him, then down at her hands. "Because of you," she said softly. "I found my heart here." Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed across the land metal boots on stone. Engines powering down, doors hissing open. Daniel peeked through a gap in the rocks and saw them 6 figures, tall, armored, carrying long weapons. And one more behind them, larger, slower, a commander. They weren't from any species Daniel had worked with. Their armor was gray, faces hidden, but their movement was cold and practiced. These weren't explorers. These were hunters. "They want her back," Daniel whispered. "Or worst, they want to destroy what she's become." Mira stepped to his side and held out her hand. "No more running," she said. "We protect our home." Daniel nodded, then placed his hand in hers. The moment their fingers touched, a light spread across the ground, soft at first, then bright and strong. The shelter pulsed with it, wires, glowing walls vibrating as if it were breathing with them. The first blast came fast. Warning shot. It hit the ground near the shelter, sending dust flying. Mira raised her arms, and a blue shield appeared, wrapping around the shelter like a bubble. The second blast struck the shield and bounced away, sparks flying into the sky. Daniel took position by the entrance, his blaster aimed. "If they step through that door, I fire." Mira nodded, but her focus was on something else. Her breathing slowed, her body glowing brighter. Then the light around her spread out, seeping into the rocks, the air. The broken tech in the corners of the room, Daniel could feel it wasn't just energy. It was her soul. Outside, one of the soldiers stepped forward, holding a scanner. He pointed at the shelter, shouting something in a strange language. The commander raised a heavy weapon and fired again. The shield cracked. Mira stumbled, gasping. Daniel rushed to her side. "Don't push too hard. You're burning up." She looked at him, eyes full of light and tears. "I don't want to lose this. I won't let them take it." Daniel cupped her face gently. "Then don't fight alone. We do this together," with his hand still on her shoulder. The glow spread again, brighter this time. The shelter responded. Walls, hardened turrets that hadn't moved in years, lifted slowly from the corners. Mira pointed toward the ridge, and light shot into the sky like a beacon. The soldiers hesitated. One stepped back. Another raised his weapon too late. The ground split open beneath them. Not from an explosion, but from energy. Mira's energy. A surge of light erupted from the soil, lifting the attackers off their feet and throwing them backward. Their weapons scattered, their armor cracked. Only the commander remained standing. Barely. He stepped forward, raised his gun, then stopped. Because Mira was floating now, her feet just above the ground. Her body wrapped in swirling light. Her voice echoed, soft but powerful. "This is my home. You can't take it from me." The commander aimed. Daniel fired first. His blaster hit the mark. The weapon exploded in the commander's hands, knocking him down. Mira landed softly beside Daniel, her glow dimming, but her body steady. She looked up at him, smiling. "We Did it? Daniel nodded. Yeah, we did. The invaders didn't rise again. Some crawled back to the ship, defeated. The engines powered up, and the ship lifted off, leaving the ground scorched and empty. They didn't look back. Daniel and Mira stood in silence, watching until the ship vanished into the sky. The sun was rising now, golden light filling the shelter. Warm and gentle, Daniel turned to her and said, "It's over. You're safe." Myra looked around, eyes full of wonder. She walked to the center of the shelter where she had first drawn her marks in the dirt. She knelt down, wiped away the old symbols, and drew a new one, a house, and beside it two figures, one tall, one small. Daniel looked over her shoulder, then smiled. "That's us." She nodded and whispered, "My family." That night, they didn't need to hide. They sat outside under the stars. Myra, leaning against Daniel's side, warm and still glowing softly. He placed his arm around her, and she didn't move away. For the first time in her life, Myra didn't feel hunted or broken or afraid. She felt like she belonged.